go. Yeah, they're just sitting here watching videos all day. And
Oh my God.
they're not supposed to. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
The regular board meeting for the governing board of trustees for Romoland School District is called to order at 5:30 p.m. A roll call, Mr. Rubber. Here. Mrs. Moon. Here. Mrs. Clay.
Oh my God. Here.
Mr. Schrader.
Here.
And myself, Mr. Gray, here. Is there any public comment for closed session, Trevor?
There it is.
Mr. Smith, I just want to clarify, did you prefer to speak now or when the public meeting starts at 6:30?
Either one, I'm
Okay,
completely good with either one, so. You're your preference.
you can go step up to the podium.
Okay, thanks.
Here, push the button on the mic to turn it on.
Hi there, my name is Mike Smith. I'm gonna just come down for my own self. In general, some things I just noticed from last year to this year that I wanted to bring up. First thing is my first daughter, my kids all have gone to Chase Middle School since its inception. And my daughter 8 years ago was one of the first sixth graders in that school. That was the graduating class of 2020. They started out the music program at Chase Middle School with Miss Silva when it was just a beginning band. When she left Chase, there were 3 bands. Since then, it's grown, and this is the feeder school into Heritage High School. And it was great because that class of 2020, all of the main leadership students were all from Chase Middle School from that music program. That's when there was year-round band. I have a new student now, 6th grade last year. Now it's a trimester class instead. And Ms. Clark, who's the new band director, is having an issue with the fact that now she has beginning students mixed with advanced students. And students who would like to be in band can't, because it's not part of their core. So my daughter is one of these students. And we have these Facebook pages for the community, who you have half the parents are like, my kid wants to be in band, but they can't. Or you get parents who are, why is my child in band? They don't even play an instrument. So you see that that's an issue. And again, with that feeding into high school, it's going to be an issue. The new band director at Heritage saw that already in band camp. Heritage had a band of about 130, 140 students. Now at the band camp, they have 25.
Oh.
Yeah. And so, and the new band director wasn't sure what he was going to be getting in. And he'd already seen from last year a drop in what students should be coming in from a program that had been really good here. So my daughter, who's more of a fine arts student, she's not into the sciences, she has a learning disability, so she has that issue, but she excels in those fine arts, drama, dance, band. With the band being an issue, she's not allowed to be in band right now. She thought she would then stand to go to maybe a sport or something that she could exert herself, which talked about cross country. And she found out today that there may not be sports this year. So that to me was another issue. These kids have already been locked up the last year. This is their chance to team build socially, and also with these kind of things, it gets them mentally stimulated as well. They're going out, they're exerting themselves in different sports, there are strategies involved. In something like cross country, there's endurance built, there's stamina, there's all these things that mentally challenge you. Without those things, it's not stuck right. So that's why I was here today, was just going to address that issue of taking away these programs from kids who don't do sports or the fine arts, or the kids who do sports. These all are activities that were introduced to them in elementary school. This is middle school is not the time to introduce it to them again, or force them into programs that they don't want to be in, or that they don't excel in. It's their chance to build here So when they step into high school, they are ready. And they can excel in the programs that they want to excel. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Smith, we'll now go to a closed session at 5:36 PM to discuss public employee discipline, dismissal, release, and negotiations.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
You're not allowed to make comments.
Here, you need the one with the clear.
All right. Bud's gotta stop, we're meeting started.
The regular board meeting of the Romoland School District has reconvened at 6:34 p.m. Ms. Price, was there any action taken in closed session?
There was no action taken in closed.
Will now stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, over the governance norms, we agreed to act with dignity, respect differences, build trust, work as a team, engage the public, focus on the success of every student, work together for the common good. We're going to move on to the governing board and trustees reports. Mr. Reller.
I just want to take an opportunity and thank staff for one thing in particular. The COVID video was really, really well done. And I'm very excited about all the work that's being done in our communications department, keeping our community updated on what's going on in the district, as well as the actions of the board. And I think a topic on tonight's agenda is another addition to, or a topic that's going to really catapult us into the into really involving our community and our government. So thank you to the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Reller. Mrs. Moon.
I'd just like to welcome everybody back, all the hard work you did to prepare for that. And it's just so nice to have a little normalcy. I bet the pictures of that were posted or shared with us of how excited the kids were, I think it just warmed my heart. So it's been long, long overdue. So welcome back, and here's to a great year and overcoming those little challenges.
Thank you, Mrs. Clayton.
Mr. Reller, very well put. I totally agree with what you said. I mean, you were spot on. And I'm excited. I'm excited that the staff from all of our district has got the school year off to a big start. And we're looking forward to some more great weeks here in Romoland.
Thank you, Mrs. Clayton. And myself, excited to see what this year brings, and hopefully everything goes well. Got off to a great start. That's all for me. Mr. Payton.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Couple of things tonight. So just a reminder that following CDPH guidelines specific to TK through grade 12 schools, when no students are present, fully vaccinated staff and board members have the option of removing their masks if they attested that they are fully vaccinated and have submitted the form to Human Resources. And any members of the public, we ask that you remain masked as we cannot verify your vaccination status. And the second part is we just completed day 4 of school. Excited to return students to in-person, full day teaching and learning. Overall, it was a successful start to the year. I appreciate, every staff member's efforts to welcome students back. It takes many layers. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, even without COVID, it's a chaotic environment to start the year. As a reminder to our community, COVID-19 is still a factor in the local community, which also means that it's a factor in our schools. And I'd like to remind our parents and guardians to just please conduct those daily symptom checks with your students and keep them home if they are exhibiting symptoms. And also a reminder that school sites have test kits for those displaying symptoms or those that were identified as close contacts of a COVID case. That's it.
Thank you. Moving on to public comments. Do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Employee association reports. We have any tonight. And then we move on to information items. So we move on to fiscal year 2021-2022. 45-day budget revision, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, President Gary, members of the board, superintendent, Peyton, and members of cabinet. Tonight, we're going to be going through the 45-day budget revision. So just to orient the board to where we are, this is basically the second step in our annual cycle for the 21-22 fiscal year. Back in June, the board adopted our local budget. However, at that time, the state had adopted its budget, and there were some significant changes that were made between the May revise and the actual adoption of the budget. Last year, this item was required to be approved by the board because of the significant cuts that the governor proposed in last year. May revise, we're looking at 10% cuts. However, this year, because the financial situation is a lot better, we're just here to present information tonight. So again, why are we here? Ed Code 42127 requires that not later than 45 days after the governor signs the Budget Act, districts will make available to the public changes that were made to their budgets as a result of the actual signed Budget Act. The biggest change I want to point out is we've had some changes to the concentration grant. So as you might remember, the concentration grant is awarded to districts to help support our unduplicated students. That's our students that are socioeconomically disadvantaged, our foster youth, and our English learners. So for districts that have 55% or greater of their population that are identified as those students, they receive concentration grant funds. So historically, these funds have been considered unrestricted. However, the way that these funds are being given to us now, they're actually restricted, but they're still calling them unrestricted. We're giving about $900,000 more in concentration grant funding, which we'll have to work with Dr. Weiss to prepare an LCAP update for this year to explain how we're going to spend this money. This money has to be used to be increase the ratio of adults to students on campuses at school sites where the rate of unduplicated students is at 55% or greater. We reached out to our attorneys because the language in the law is not super clear on if that means more people, if that means extending hours for existing people, so we have more people on school sites longer. And they weren't able to even give us an answer yet because the language came out so late, the budget was kind of put together right at the last minute. And so even our attorney groups are trying to sort out all of the information to give us guidance on if we need to go hire more people or if we're able to just increase hours. On that same vein, there's the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. You may remember earlier this year, there was the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, which was money that we were able to use to spend on some aids and that type of thing. This is supposed to be an ongoing program. And essentially, this is modeled after the ACES program. So it's the rigor of the offerings that are supposed to be made to the students is similar to ACES. But the language is something, again, we're trying to get legal definitions for, because there's that word in the first section there, you can see that districts must offer expanded learning to all classroom-based and duplicated students grade K through 5 and must provide expanded learning to at least half of these students. We're not sure what provide means. Are we required to ensure that half of those students take us up on this opportunity? Are we just required to offer it to these students? It's not very clear. And the other piece of this thing that's rather confusing and challenging is that in the 22-23 year, expanded learning must be offered to all students and be provided to any students that request it. So we're just trying to get some clarification around that language provide, because for us, our unduplicated population is 72-73% of our 4,000 students. That's quite a few students that we would be required to offer these programs to. And so there's concerns about how we would be able to deliver that expanded learning. One of the caveats of this program is that similar to ACES, it's required to expand the typical instructional day to 9 hours. So you would have your standard instructional day, and then this program would extend the overall instructional day to 9 hours. On top of that, during summer breaks or winter breaks, potentially at least 30 days when we're not in session, we would be required to offer 9-hour days to our students as well. So there is the potential to opt out of this if this isn't a program that we're going to be able to offer just because of the requirements, but we're still seeking all of the information. It's not fully fleshed out. So we'll have to bring back some more information to the board once we're able to get clarification on it. During the 2020 year,
And that's for my continuing question on after-school programs going on, but
Yes, that was the funding that they had put out for after-school programs. And so we're trying to determine if it's something that we're gonna be able to offer because of that additional requirement to offer that 30 days during non-instructional time. Some districts are partnering with third parties for their ACES program already, and so that's something that's a potential. But again, we would need to see what the actual rules are before we try to contract with a third party.
Mr. Eller, I'll clarify that we have a backup source of funding for the expansion of our after-school programs, as the board requested, I believe, last spring. What we're trying to decide is this the appropriate funding to make that happen or not, so that we're utilizing our resources in a more targeted fashion. We're just waiting for clarification from our lawyers on that, but we are making progress in terms of what that may look like and how do we do the selection criteria.
So as you may have seen in the 2020 year, the Employee Development Department paid out a tremendous amount of unemployment insurance to people throughout the state of California. And school districts actually have their own separate pool of unemployment insurance. But for some reason, the Employee Development Department, the EDD, decided that they needed to increase our rates from 0.05% to 1.23%. So it's over 2,000% increase, which for us took our unemployment from around 15,000 to around 350,000 for this year to make up that shortfall. Through the legislature, they were able to help us out a little bit on that and make it so it's only a 0.5% increase. So it's still going up by over $100,000, but at least it's not going up to $350,000. There's still a lot of pushback on this because it doesn't make sense that the school pool should have been so depleted. Most districts, ours included, didn't reduce staff during the pandemic. They did continue to employ everyone. So it's an ongoing challenge to determine where all that money went. And then transitional kindergarten, the 21-22 is going to be a planning year. And so what they're doing essentially is they're going to expand the eligibility for transitional kindergarten by 2 months each year, starting next year. So that way students that are born between September and February are able to attend transitional kindergarten in 22-23, in September through April of 23-24, September and June of 24-25, and then in 25-26, a child who would have their 4th birthday by September 1st shall be admitted. So essentially all 4-year-olds will be able to attend transitional kindergarten at that point. In recognition of concerns about funding, there is going to be facilities funding for transitional kindergarten. However, it's still at the same rates that typical funding would be when the state has money for funding. 50% of the project would be recovered by the school district. If we were doing a retrofit project, the school district would have to pay 40%, and the state would give us 60%. And there's also the caveat that none of that facilities funding can be spent on portables for transitional kindergarten. Have to be permanent buildings. We just have a few other changes that stood out. There's going to be Educator Effectiveness Block Grant. This is to be used to help districts for coaching and mentoring staff in the instructional setting, providing professional development. Like most of these programs that we're talking about tonight, we don't have a lot of information. It's not clear how much we're going to get exactly, because again, the state just kind of threw the budget together at the last minute. The Universal Meals Program, that's actually going to start for the state in the 22-23 year. For the current year, we're still operating under the federal government waivers for the seamless summer feeding options. So we'll be able to provide meals this year at no cost to our students because of the federal government. And the beginning of the 22-23 year, it'll be through the state government. And then we finally did see some increases to our special education funding. We took our the rate that we get for each special education student from $625 up to $715. We don't have an exact amount of what that will look like to our district specifically because that money goes through the SELPA and there's charges that are associated with that. So it is nice to see some increases in special ed. That's something that's happened over these past couple of years because traditionally it's been locally underfunded. Are there any questions?
So the Universal Meals Program, is there any type of language out there, what's going to require from school districts to, you know, be able to go, is there going to be any audits, or is it just going to be blanket, no income qualifier, none of that, everybody's going to get it?
That's correct. No one, everyone's gonna get it. We're still gonna work with our families to have them fill out the forms or an alternate income form, because that still is gonna drive the supplemental concentration grant funding for the district. So the nutrition services department, we're gonna work really hard to still go out and do some education for our families to let them know that although your meals will come at no cost to you, we still need this form filled out so we can ensure that we qualify for other funding. But there is no income qualifiers.
So, you know, nothing comes free. So,
For everyone.
right, so it sounds like the state of California's figured out a way to get federal money without giving it to the school districts. And because right now, essentially our free and reduced reimbursement comes from the federal government, is that correct?
Partially from the federal government, partially from the state.
Okay, so now we're not gonna get any of that.
We'll get the
It's gonna go to the state, and then the state's gonna give it to the school districts in order to pay for universal meals for all. And, you know, like I said earlier, I don't trust the state as far as I can throw it. And so I'm just trying to figure, you know, I'm not as smart as you are, and I'm trying to figure it out. How are they gonna make money on that? And because they are, because if they weren't able to, they wouldn't do this. We're not.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Miller. And in reviewing the literature, this, the universal meals becomes a mandate essentially for school districts. And I think we've talked about mandates in the past where the state will say, you're gonna do this thing now, and we'll give you money to pay for that thing. Over time, we don't always get all of the money that's required to pay for that thing. For at least the 22-23 year, there was funding in place through Prop 98 to cover the cost. However, you know, past that, we're not sure.
Here we go. Just another thing that the school districts have to pay for because it's in statute and it's gonna be unfunded. Or they're gonna do deferrals when they don't get the money that they think they do, and they do smoke and mirrors behind Prop 98 and all that. I just don't understand school funding in the state of California. And now they're adding this, a very large component of what happens every day on the school side and feeding our children. It's discouraging. You know, the state through COVID, you know, in January predicted we were gonna fall off the cliff. And then all of a sudden they revise, the guy comes up with billions and billions of dollars extra money. Am I correct? So I just don't understand how our economy did that well during COVID shutdowns. I don't get it, so I'm trying to figure out where that money came from.
So, you know, for the state of California, the money that comes into the state is primarily driven by income tax, especially for higher earners in the state. And so all this time during the shutdown, the stock market did amazing. So all that time, the stock market's doing amazing. The investors in California, they're winning because of that. They're earning, you know, increased returns because of that. They're paying capital gains taxes on that. So that's what drove most of it, was just an increase to the personal income tax. That's how we got so much. As to how they went from, we're gonna fall off the cliff to we're way up here, how they missed it by that much, I can't even begin to speculate.
Do they believe that, I mean, do they have actual data that they can lay out and say, this is how much we got from our billionaires in the state of California? And that, I would love to see that, if Casbo or something has that they can just send us in a document just to show us. Because like I said, I'm not smart as you are, and I can't figure that stuff out. But I'm just worried that later on down the road, it's gonna be an unfunded mandate, or they're gonna do deferrals, because feeding kids is not cheap. And just a little worried about it. I love it, but I'm worried.
I think we all have experience of been educational from some of these unfunded mandates that come through. So your concern is noted based on past history at times, right? And I guess we'll see where we end up with it. But let's hope it doesn't come to fruition, but, you know, when the economy has a downturn, which all economies do at some point, then we'll see where they get their cuts.
Before I forget it, my closing comments, I want to bring up a request for a little bit of information on special education. How do we educate every single one of our special education students with respect to inclusion and things like that? I know that we lead the way in a lot of that, but I think I need a little bit of a refresher on how we do that. Everything from our, mild mod students to SH to our autistic students to others.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. We'll move to facilities update.
President Curie, members of the board tonight, Mr. Quorum and I will be presenting the facilities update. This time on the screen.
Everyone. So over the summer, we had quite a few projects going on. We talked to you guys about the board and they were approved. Right here's a picture of the Mason View Elementary School where we did a big carpet replacement. We were able to get the whole thing done over summer. We thought we were gonna have to split it over summer and winter. They came in and performed. It turned out really nice. And we were also able to get that restroom, the artist that they've been asking for the last couple of years. So we're good to go. It was able to open on the first day. We were happy, students were happy. You can see with the new turf and everything around the playground, really fresh and ready to play. So. And then also we were able to do 2 of the paint projects. That was kind of over Boulder Ridge. They were still in progress. Even Lake Chase was completed and started the day after the board meeting when it was approved. We actually had contractors out there, I think it was on June 9th. They finished in about 3 weeks. Boulder Ridge finished the day before school started. So that one was got it a little close, but I mean, all in all, I think we did okay. So, and besides those, you want to go to the end of this right now? So we had some other ones that are not necessarily on the slide presentation. We did the asphalt removal replacement at Harvest. We rekeyed Harvest Valley as also the district office. That was all completed during the summer. We completed the EMS system at Boulder Ridge. That was completed about 2 days before school started. And then let's see, what did we do?
The restriping of Romoland.
The restriping of Romoland and the slurry seal, yeah, then the removal of the harvest and the landscape, we did the tree trimming, which we're actually on a thing right now. My landscape contractor has a program where it's basically satellite views of all the trees, and all the districts actually have sizes, measurements and everything. So like 1 year will be kind of expensive, the next year's not because they go on a rotation of what needs to be done. But we can actually track it. It's on a satellite view. We know what needs to be done at what time, which is really nice. So that was one of the last things we tried to do, a little freshen up before school started. Other than that, it was a busy summer. The preschool buildings, site work was completed, everything was completed. We had a small issue with the manufacturer. The buildings are being actually delivered on Saturday. So we will have those up and ready to open by the time we come back from Labor Day or soon. So everything went well.
I have a question. I may not have heard you. Did you say anything about the Boulder Ridge roof?
The Boulder Ridge roof, I have material bids and I have labor bids, but because of everything that was going on between the EMS system and the painting, because the EMS system, they were, I'm postponing that to winter break.
Winter break?
Yes.
Okay, and it'll hold up there in the rain?
Yeah. No, we're still good on it. It's definitely time. I have pictures and everything. They did a site survey on the entire thing, so we're okay. I would have loved to have done it over summer, but it was just gonna be too conflicting with the other contractors I had on site.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, and then there was also summer school going on there for the first 30 days, so yeah, it would have been, it was hard enough having 2 contractors there. The administration would have been that. So that is on my schedule for winter.
Thank you.
Anything else?
All right. Mr. Farnham, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about Harvest Valley Elementary School. One of the first things we want to look at is capacity of the school site. So based on the number of classrooms that we have, you can see it's been 909, but then as Mr. Parham was indicating, we're gonna add 2 classrooms to the preschool. It bumps up our capacity to 957. The lower blue line there is the, just our regular TK through 6 enrollment. And then on top of that, in the darker blue is our preschool enrollment. So because those preschoolers do take up space, we wanted to count their space against the overall capacity of the school site. And then, as I was talking about in the earlier presentation, the transitional kindergarten, we tried to layer that in on top there in the orange. We tried to estimate how many TK students we might increase by. That's kind of an unknown at this point because we don't know how many families are going to take advantage of the expanded TK. But we wanted to make sure that we accounted for, at least based on our current projections that we had, increasing them by the same percentages of the year that was going to become available for them to attend school. So as far as that goes, as far as capacity goes, we're in good shape there until at least the 25-26 school year. We also want to review some of the projects that we've done in Harvest Valley in the past few years. You can see starting in 2015-16, we connected to sewer. School site was still on a septic tank at that time. 16-17, we did the lunch shade structure, and then we utilized the drop grant funding to redo that basketball court that's in there in the middle of the campus. 2017-18, the TK playground. 2018-19, the roofing, and then 19-20, we did the security fencing, new classroom office furniture, new carpet, and then we did grade 1 through 5 playground. Just last year, we did painting, we painted the entire school site. We added that restroom building room this summer, and at the same time we did the restroom building, we did a full service for that playground. In the upcoming year, or year now, we're going to be doing security cameras there for safety, and then new blacktop. We pulled out, we did a remove and replace the blacktop with the other basketball court that isn't the one that was funded by the cross grant, and then slurry and restripe the front parking.
Do we have security cameras at all the schools, or is this the start of implementing that and Harvest is the first school?
Thank you. So we currently only have cameras at Eaton and Chase. And so for this year, as part of the LCAP, we're going to be doing the district office here in Romoland and Harvest Valley this year. And then the next year, we'll do Mason View and Boulder Ridge. And then by that time, Chase's system will be quite aged, so we'll replace theirs at that time. So it's a 3-year rollout, basically.
And is that inside classrooms or outside the perimeter?
Outside the perimeter, and then potentially throughout the school site itself, but I don't believe other than potentially being a front office.
All of the cameras will be external, with the exception of one camera in the front lobby to get the front entrance for public.
Okay.
But yeah, we have no plans to put cameras inside any actual instructional areas.
Well, how many cameras is that?
I believe it's in the ballpark of 40 cameras for each of the elementary schools.
So did we get a presentation on those cameras and when they're gonna go in, and just basically a presentation on the effectiveness of them? Because that would be really good to know, especially in the dark.
Absolutely.
Right, did they pick those up because we've had vandalism at some of our school sites, and would that pick it up, and I guess and when it starts?
You never really know what you're gonna get. I mean, we've had cameras at I wish I had a mic here. We can grab a microphone.
I'll buy some time.
Like the Ring doorbell?
So, cameras serve a couple of things. Sometimes they're a deterrent. If people, when they see the camera, and it may prevent them from engaging in vandalism, but that doesn't stop everybody. And so those that choose to, the cameras give us a better chance at actually helping the police find who did it. And I can tell you, like recently, I'm aware of a case in another district where there was some vandalism. And they had cameras, and one of the staff members recognized one of the people, and that led within a week to the arrest of the pair that were doing the vandalism. So it kind of serves both purposes.
Good. Thank you.
So we worked with the cities and the county to determine if there was any other development that was going on that was going to impact Harvest Valley. And the only project that has been able to be identified, you might have noticed right across the street here. So it's kind of funny. we're right here, this is the district office. So it cuts this way, goes all the way up to Watson there, and then over to Sultana. Cuts kind of across there and back down to 74. So Lennar is building that project, reached out to them, they're expecting to have all homes available in January. The best estimate that we have, this is supposed to be a build out that goes through 2027. I've asked them if they can give me more specific timelines, and they don't have that available just yet. But based on our student generation factors that we've been working with, we're anticipating 60 students for Harvest Valley. However, those students are already part of the projections that we presented earlier as far as capacity goes. And there is now there's significant development in Harvest Valley's batteries for now. There may be onesie twosies here and there, but no big developments. And just to recap about the current relocatable buildings on Harvest Valley, there's 19 altogether. There's the blue ones here, the orange ones are permanent. And next to each one, we put the year that it was built. And as you can see, we have one that's as old as 1975, and then through 1980, 87, all the way up to 2002, 19 in total. So what we're hoping to do tonight is present some relocatable building options, and then see if we can get some guidance on what the board would like to do, if anything, that we can bring back to you in the September board meeting. Our options would be to remove and replace the existing portables exactly as they are, remove and replace the existing portables and utilize a new configuration, remove and replace the existing portables with permanent buildings, or leave the existing portables in place. This is the first option that we were looking at, and I was working with Sharp from PGHM to try to get an estimated cost of a portable by portable if we were to do one here and one here and one here. And we estimated based on what we know today, but as we've seen in the last year, things can change, materials go up over time, that type of thing. But we estimate that a single portable will cost about $242,000, including the site work. So some of the options we just wanted to put out here was, if we were to replace the 7 oldest ones, so those are the red ones identified in the picture here, we think that would cost about 1.7 million. If we were to replace that whole strip of 10, that would cost about 1.9 million. And then if we were to replace all 19, we'd be looking around 3.6 million. Another option is to look at reconfiguring, as we talked about. This option at about 2.6 million would take the 7 oldest portables that we have in that row and move them up to the north end of the campus there, or demolish the 7 oldest ones, buy 7 new ones, we put them up at the north end of the campus there, and take the 3 newest ones and put them up there, so we'd have 10 again all together up there in a newer configuration. Another option.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna add, in this model, one of the things it does is it opens up the green space where you can be viewed from the interior of campus a little bit more easily. Right now, that row of portables kind of serves as a visual barrier between, the blacktop and the pervious concrete that we have put in and the green space. And in this configuration, where that row of building is now gone, so it makes clearer sightlines for the campus.
So in a similar configuration to demolish 10 of those portables and replace that, and then just add that area, that reconfigured area, but with permanent buildings as opposed to portables, we're looking to be about 8.8 million.
I have a question. We were presented, in May.
This one.
We were presented in May with a plan for 2.6 million with, I understand, a little different, and just 1, 2, 3, actually 10 portables.
Like 2.6 million was the one right before this.
Can you go flip it back? So, because I'm getting confused.
Next to that one.
Okay, so you're talking about keeping 2 of them.
3.
Where's the third one?
So we take these 7 out,
Uh-huh.
and we get this one, and this
Oh,
one.
I didn't see that.
But they're
one.
relocated.
Those are the 3 newest ones. Then we relocate them up there with 7 new ones.
Okay, let me look for a second. How new are they? When you say new.
Can you go
So
back to
they're
your
still
slide?
usable? Yeah,
The 3 newest are 2002.
But the 3 newest in the strip are 90.
in the strip. Yeah,
98, 98.
okay. All right, flip forward then. All right, 8 million, and all we're doing is replacing,
These are permanent buildings as opposed
oh, they're
to-
permanent versus
These
portable.
are just
Oh, okay, okay,
Sorry.
all right, sorry, okay.
So,
Now
so just to clarify, like what we're hoping to do and hear is feedback from the board on what we can bring back in September for
right.
consideration for approval, but we wanted to show you like the different, if the portable options in the same configuration, maybe a portable option with a different configuration and the benefits to the campus.
I got it.
And we didn't want to assume that there wasn't a portable or, excuse me, a permanent building consideration that the board might want to consider, so we just were including that.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to get some guidance from the board tonight so that we can do work before the September board meeting to bring back an approval. If the board decides to do something with Harvest, well, I'll let Mr. Bacon talk about the economy of scale. If the board decides to do portables at Boulder, which is later in the agenda, and then there may be some cost savings if we connected Harvest to that at the same time of year. So with that, I'll stop talking and turn it back over to Mr. Bacon.
All right, we go to the next one. So this was the last option that we had. This was a two-story building, again, just presenting multiple options. This is a permanent two-story building, eliminating that row of 10 portables and building a permanent about 11.4. Then trying to determine ways to pay for this project, if that's something that we decide to do. You know, we've kind of brought to the board over time how much money we have in for existing facilities. But then working with our auditors, we've been able to identify that we could we could utilize about $2 million out of some of the one-time funding that we've received from the federal government to offset some general fund operating costs, which would free up general fund dollars that we could potentially use for this project. So again, as Mr. Payne had indicated, we're looking for guidance if the board would like us to prepare an item to bring back in September. If there's a direction that the board would like to go, we'd be able to bring it back at the September board meeting. Working closely with PJHM, they believe they could draw up plans, about a 3 to 6 month process, and then submission to DSA up to 6 months. So depending on approvals, we'd be able to do this over the summer of 22, 23. It's doable, but tight timeline.
I have a question because on a few of the slides, you were reutilizing some of the existing portables. So would those be updated or are they sufficient?
Like the 2.6 million.
Yes.
Can you go back to that?
You have like 3 portables that you're not gonna rip out of it. I mean, wouldn't rip out of it. Why are we keeping them? I'm just
Right.
curious.
Just for cost savings.
Your costs,
We'd add an additional $600,000 in cost to replace those 3. So because those ones are newer, they're not new, they're 22, 23 years old, to use some cost savings to reuse those in the new configuration.
do we need to even replace them?
This would be, John, do you know how good the 3 newest portables are at Harvard?
Honestly, they're actually in fairly good shape. They've had new carpet put in, they've just been repainted. I mean, if we did decide to replace, the other 7, we could always, go through and if there's any skirting and siding, anything like that's damaged, any wood rot or anything like that, that could be repaired, or they would all look new again. But to be honest with you, they are in fairly good shape right now. I think would be a good option to be able to save, $600,000 and utilize those 3.
Do we have to replace them though? Like if we said, hey, you know what, we just don't want those. They just disappear. I mean, not even replacing them. Not even replacing them. I'm sorry, Shark, could you have the podium? I can't hear you, sorry.
No, but, I think you're talking about capacity. So
Yes.
If the campus doesn't need, those classrooms with 25 students and a good seats for 75 other students, or you don't have programs that utilize those buildings, it's a question that you just would not replace 10 portables and just replace 7 of them, or
Just
some-
10 and
or
not
some
the other
number.
3. Okay. It's just a question, and maybe Sharon, you might know the answer to this. The new portables. Do you think, I mean, I'm assuming here, I'm taking a step, are they more cost efficient than what we have on that campus now? Meaning as far as energy or insulation or any of those things?
New construction is definitely more energy efficient than any of the buildings constructed 20+ years ago, for a number of reasons. Windows, 30 years ago, they were single pane windows, we're double pane windows now.
Okay,
The insulation is better. Our building codes are just more stringent than they were 20 years ago. So from an energy standpoint, yes, the newer buildings would be more energy.
so we could be saving money versus what we have in there now on energy possibly. And then I was also gonna ask, we're gonna hopefully pass the folder, getting the portables in. Can we piggytail and let's say buy more portables at a cheaper rate? That's-
Yes, we did reach out to the vendor that we typically purchase the portables from. They did indicate that if we were to buy, we had asked if we buy 18. So for example, if we did the Boulder and we replaced all 10 at Harvest Valley, we'd save about between 20 and 30,000 per portable by buying that many.
So the 7 that you want to demolish and replace, those can't be restored? And then didn't you just say that on the other 3 you painted them and you thought they were really good? Could those other 7 be restored similarly at a much lesser cost?
To be honest with you, something like that, I think would get to the point where, I mean, it's like a rule of thumb that if you spend 40%, for example, to do a replacement,
Like putting a Band-Aid on it?
basically, yes. So when we have painted them already and everything is, was done to what we can do right now, they do have new flooring in it. However, but if we start putting in the foundation, if we have to start replacing foundation, subfloor, siding, and everything like that, that could end up costing more.
Exactly.
So there's kind of like a formula you almost have to work out, it's, to say it's 40% of the cost of, we're gonna spend $50,000 to fix one, it's still it'll be in 1970s.
Right.
With the same thing like Charlotte State, the insulation, the air conditioning units, those old barn units, to do it, they're so much more efficient, they economize the cloud, which weren't required back then. So there's gonna be a lot of differences between.
Are they quieter as well?
A lot quieter. The new energy efficient ones, the Sear, I don't know off the top of my head what Sear they are now, but they run completely different. The new ones have carbon monoxide detectors on, which opens up the fresh air intake if the carbon monoxide gets too hot. So there's so many different, even the framing on it, they're moment frame now as opposed to where they were traditional before. So these things are, the 2019 code that Charles talking about is completely different compared to what we have out there.
Yeah, it just sounded a little exciting about those 3, so I thought, oh, let's check on it. Thank you so much.
And then do either 3, do you know about the warranty on these? I mean, I know we've had other portables and I have not asked this question, but are there warranties?
If there's structural defects, I mean, as far as the contractor's warranty, it's typically a 1-year warranty on
Okay.
anything. The same thing with the air conditioners or anything else, but I mean, if there was a structural defect, I can find out for you guys and give you the exact answer of what this come with. But typically it's a 1 year, something like that. Because since they are portable, I mean, they can sit on dirt, they can be, so there's no foundation type of thing, but we won't do that. Everything that we do is gonna be on asphalt from now on. That's the other thing. The older ones are set on dirt, so you have moisture and everything coming up. It's just, so if we do decide to move and everything will be on an asphalt pad, all the utilities will be redone, brought up, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge out there.
So that leads me to what you just said. You got me thinking about if we look at that plan right there and we keep those 3. So are those 3, will they be sitting on dirt now or are they sitting on asphalt?
If we went to that extent right there, we would actually, we would put a foundation on it.
Okay.
We would put an asphalt on it. Typically, we would go 6 inches all the way around, a foot all the way around, whatever it is. Like right now, you have the pervious concrete, and you might have 8 or 10 feet because of the ramps and everything of asphalt. So once we took the old ones out, we would just continue that on. They're 40 feet deep, so we would go 41 feet or whatever the whole length of the entire was.
Okay, and I have a question for Shar. So Shar, because
Thank
you
you.
handled this, all the approvals and everything, can you repeat again? Like, this isn't gonna come to a vote until next month. Repeat our timeline again for getting this into DSA and all that.
So, if you, based on the number of portables, if it were 10 portables that we were taking to DSA, that constitutes a typical DSA timeline, which means they take it in for an intake review, and review could be anywhere from 4 to 6 months for them.
All right.
So from our standpoint, if we started the process and started drawing plans, it would take us about 3 months to get to DSA, and then say anywhere, I would say between 4 and 6 months for them to approve it. Being just a relocatable project and dependent on how busy DSA is, maybe it would go a lot faster. The desire to do the construction would be summer of 2022. It's tight, and DSA is out of our control, but,
Right.
And then, of course, it would be, working with the building manufacturer to ensure that they could fabricate them and have them ready also. So a couple of factors, not just approval, but also how fast the modular building foundation might.
So if the Boulder portables pass this evening, are we pushing a limit for next year as well? Are we that close to a timeline that we may not get them in by next summer?
It'll be tight. It'll be like every summer before John.
Yeah.
It'll be down to the wire, but, 4 weeks, to get it done by 4 weeks sooner is definitely helps, but
Okay, thank you.
I don't want John to think he has easy.
I don't know. I've heard he performs miracles, so. Thank you.
Were there any more questions?
So I would have a question. As far as buying them all, say we go towards one of these plans and getting that discount, is that reflected on this cost or?
No, that would be more of this cost.
Good question.
I like the idea of 2,600,000, but it's important to me that it just doesn't become a set of portables that are just put there. I think it is important that we really connect it to the rest of the campus and think long-term, because as you showed us earlier, there's going to be development right down the street. And as we know, when one development goes in, others will come in as well because the infrastructure gets put in. So we're going to need to ensure that we have room there to expand, if we need to. Will they look similar to the ones at Romoland Elementary that we put together on a concrete base? Okay, and well, what is the difference between putting them on a concrete base versus an asphalt base?
Cost.
Concrete more?
To be honest with you, an asphalt base, since most of it's covered, is probably the most cost-effective way to do it. And then I prefer like the concrete ramps and stuff. So if you're looking for something that's gonna be more of a permanent fixture, if you remember what we did on modernization over at Romoland, portables 1 through 4, we took out all the ramps, so we did one continuous concrete ramp. And that's forever. So, but as far as to go through the cost of concrete underneath them, there's really no need for asphalt.
And this will become in the planning phase, I would assume. My recollection is there's a hill between to go up to the rest of the campus from that area. Is that correct? So there's some steps that go up near isn't there trash dumpsters in that area?
Harvest?
Yeah, Harvest.
Yes,
Isn't there?
on the north side, yes, there is. There,
And that's where this project is gonna go, is that correct?
you're talking about the one that we relocate them to the north side of the campus?
Yeah, right there. Where that red line is there, I think there's steps that go up.
To the interior, north center
To
part of
the
the
interior
campus,
of
yeah,
the
there's a
campus.
little bit of an.
Yeah.
Right there, I don't believe there is, Mr. Rella, right there, I think it's just a curve right next to those parking spots. Because that's where the basketball court area was right there, and then if you look at those 3 lines right there, I believe that's where the parking spots are. And I believe that's just a curve that goes towards the admin office, the sidewalk.
Okay.
If you go a little bit south is where
I
you're
think
talking about, where the
right
stairs
there,
are, that's where that restroom is on the building.
Would
It's
that
just-
parking lot still stay there? Would that parking lot still be?
Those parking spaces right there would say, it looks like what would be disappearing would be the decimal points, correct?
Yeah, so this configuration, back when we did the sewer line and we had done kind of a 4-phase, this is what Harvest Valley master plan could look like. That was an area that was determined to be the best location to connect the, portables to the rest of the educational spaces and to open up the green space like, Mr. King was talking about earlier. So when Leo redid this for us, it was really going back to the conversations we had 6-7 years ago. And again, we would, meet with the stakeholders and determine if that truly is the best location and, ultimately what you decide is the best location.
Well, like I said, I like this option, but it's important that we make it conducive to the rest of the campus, and I hate the kids to walk through a parking lot to get to a set of portables, so we need to really examine that whole area if we need it, or if it could become a nice garden area or something to that effect without having any vehicle traffic in there. But I do like this, part of me says, well, we just did not get a bond passed but I think, you help me understand we're gonna be using some other funding, not our capital facilities outlay funding for this. Because, we just didn't get a bond pass and now we're upset and we're just gonna go spend our capital facilities outlay. What we have and just spend it on projects, but you're saying you're gonna be able to work the dollars to where we're using other money instead of our capital facilities outlay. We're still gonna have that money, so when we can leverage that with our community and say, hey, this is a skin we're putting in the game, and we've been very good stewards of your money. We're just not gonna go to the tax return and say, we have empty pockets, we have money, that we've really been smart at saving that money for our community.
Right, yeah, one of the provisions of a lot of the one-time money we got is it could be used to spend on existing staff, to continue employing the existing staff as kind of a catch-all. So we're able to shift one-time some costs of some staffing into that one-time federal funding, which then frees up general fund money that we can use for this project.
Thank you. And thank you for being that. And jumping into the gray area, because that's what's gonna save us and gonna keep us moving in the right direction.
Mr. Bacon, could I, sorry, Charlotte, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna add one other, funding, plus, if you will. Harvest Valley is eligible for state modernization money. We don't have any state modernization money right now. We would use this project to file for modernization because they allow, they call it replacement like for like. Because we're replacing an old classroom with a new classroom, we can get in line for money. The campus is currently eligible in today's dollars for about $3 million. So we could leverage that. Someday it would show up, but better to get it someday than not at all.
Is that something we get in line for, Sean?
Yes, so we would get in line for it, just like we got in line for the
Right.
Romoland money,
Right.
which was 4 years ago, and we're finally going to see it here maybe by the end of the year. The only thing different here is, we need to pass another state bond, but we already be in. So it's always good to be in.
It's always good to be in line. Thank you.
Mr. Bacon, would you, because of, I'm thinking beyond 5 years now, as Mr. Reller talked about the flow of things and developments in the area beyond these projections. Would you highlight for the board the couple of areas on campus that are where we do have space to add portables in this configuration? And also the potential to expand that parking lot out further at the front of the school, similar to what we did at Romoland Elementary, how we did one. Because, as the school does develop in this TK expansion and all these different things that are coming through, obviously classrooms are in need, but with classrooms comes more staff. We also need to have places to park as well. So could you highlight those on there?
Thank you, Mr. Payton. So right here, as you come into the campus, next to the horseshoe, there's a space here. There's currently there's a garden there, but the person who created the garden is no longer in the district. And so it hasn't gotten the attention maybe that it would need to stay looking nice and modern. So that's an area. And then over here, potentially, there's, I think we identified a spot for up to 2 portables that we could add there. As well as, we're freeing up all of this space. So if we did need to add portables back there, we would be able to do that because this would all be essentially moved up here. And then one of the things we had looked at is extending this parking lot. As you come in the driveway here, there's this little parking lot, potentially extending this parking lot all the way across so we have more parking spaces for the school site.
Can we put that existing parking lot that the students would have to walk across down where they're removing those portables?
It's not really a parking lot. I mean, this up here is the existing second parking lot. This area here, that's just right here is a basketball court.
I don't believe staff park in that small area right in front.
Okay.
It's on the
There's
other
a
side.
bike rack there, and I believe, call.
It's behind a gate here, so it's
Okay.
it's not open for general parking.
Okay.
Oh,
So I think we'll take more questions, but also one of the things we're looking at is what's most appealing to the board for us to consider to potentially bring back something for a formal vote in September. Around the board has a desire to do something about this balance. I would also add that, there's some of the other portables that maybe are starting to get old, that are still on the campus, or the parking lot, or some of these other things. We have been pretty good, and the board's been great about our facilities master plan and development of things. And we're in a pretty good place in terms of like doing things like painting and carpeting and those kinds of things. But our facilities master plan could evolve into staggering the replacement of some aging portables or expanding parking lots and things like that as well as the school grows.
I'm gonna speak. I really like the use of the one-time money and coming up with whatever we need to come up for the configuration that we have right there. I would love to replace, this is like dreamland to replace those 1993 portables on the other side and the 2000s down there below where I think the 4th and 5th were at one time. But facilities master plan, like you said, I think that's something that if, let's say we go with this, depending on what the rest of the board feels, but putting this into our facilities master plan for maybe 2-3 years down the road, to replace these as well, depending on how things go. We talk about the Romoland Watson project. We didn't know 6 months ago that was going to pop up like that. We didn't know. And as we know, right across the street from Harvest, in between that and Sultanas, there's that big old huge area too that could affect Harvest. 6 months from now, all of a sudden that can move. So I don't have a crystal ball on that one, but I think we need to be prepared. That's just my thoughts. I don't know what the rest of you feel.
So it would be if I'm understanding the board's desire, I want to confirm, so we bring back the right information. Would it be the board's preference that we bring back a configuration? Can you go back to that? Some more detailed information on that configuration for September for consideration. And then we're planning on bringing the facilities master plan back in October for approval. And maybe we can layer in some of these other things as those other portables get older. So, Mr. Reller, we can comment.
You opened up Pandora's box.
What did I say? What did I say?
I've done that. There's nothing more I love than a grand entrance to a school. So if there was a way for us to, in this project, to get rid of those 2 portables that are sitting there next to the loop and make some sort of nice entrance and just eliminate them, if we can cover us with open seats, I would love that. 'Cause I love open, beautiful entrances to schools, and those 2 portables have been an eyesore in in that area for a long time.
Are you talking about the loop there?
Those two right there.
Yeah, they're kindergarten classrooms right now.
I concur.
I didn't mean to open that box,
Yeah.
but we'll bring exact information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because those are 1983, right?
Yeah,
93.
93, yeah.
I will say one of the benefits of staggering the replacement is, and it may be another 20 or 30 years, but whoever's having, you guys might still be on the board, I'm gonna probably. But, having portables get to their kind of life expectancy in different phases helps future boards or future school districts, whoever's here, replace them without a huge cost burden at one time.
Yes.
And so that's something to also consider for the long term. I know that, you know, we have some problems to address right away.
What is the average life expectancy, John?
Somebody. Depending on what year.
Oh, I guess that's true, huh?
When they first started to, do portables, and they were saying 10 to 15, now it's 15 to 20. I mean, there's many, as you can see, that are well over 20 years old. But they
Yeah.
weren't originally designed for that. They were temporary housing while they were building new schools. So, I mean, but they have changed quite a bit. It's more of a permanent structure now. You can see like the district office, for example. That's a permanent building.
Perfect, thank you.
It's just, right, they'll have it in their plans.
Okay.
I know that's not happening for a while.
I'm gonna agree with this.
So Mr. Bacon, then I think we'll bring back some more details related to this plan for the board's consideration.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are approved in one motion. Do any board members have comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion?
Do I have a second?
I'll second, will we have an introduction?
Yeah, we got it.
So I did now or before or after you get approval?
Oh, we can do it
We
after.
can do it after. Yeah.
But we can have an introduction, absolutely.
All in favor, Ms. Roller,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Ms. Clay,
Aye.
myself, Mr. Jerry, aye.
Well, since I just mentioned we can have introductions, so I think we'll do that right now. If you notice, our personal orders are pretty lengthy this month. We have a lot of hiring over the summer, getting ready for the new school year. One of which you'll be working with pretty extensively as we're doing executive assistant. So I'm gonna have the Toya Fire come right up here. We typically have a lot of runners shake everybody's hands, but we kind of avoid that anymore. So we apologize for that one. But Toya has been here in our district office since 2014. She first started working in the Human Resources Office. And then she worked in Ed Services for the last, since I think 2016. And now she's making a move just a little bit down the hall and back to our building. That's kind of nice. She's back to the main building we have here. In terms of executive assistant right next to transportation. So congratulations on the position.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We'll see what other chambers today. With that,
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
In the communication corner, it indicates you worked in a variety of roles such as food service. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm very fascinated with human resources when it comes to our classified staff, particularly food service workers, and their aspirations professionally in a school district. So can you just briefly tell me about your experience as a food service worker and how that catapulted you to where you're at today? Specifically, did you have that drive? This is going to be my foot in the door. I'm going to start here and work my way up, or did doors just open and you say, I'm going to try that or do that? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
I'm very fascinated, just
It's okay.
interested.
I had a different background before I became a food service worker.
I started there and I did have the drive to move forward. I love to learn new things and I love to grow. So any opportunity that I had to grow or learn something new, I applied for that position to move forward.
Why did you start as a food service worker?
I had some personal life situations and I needed to find something new, so that's where I started. So I needed to work and that opportunity opened and I took it.
So it is, you know, this board, we've always talked about hiring from within and promoting our own, providing professional development. How, did you have a mentor or over the years, did you get professional development at one time and just say, you know what, that's what I want to do?
I actually had a background in financial services and that's what I did prior and that didn't work out, but I love professional development. I love self-improvement. I worked with John, Trevor, and Michelle, and they're very, how do I want to say?
Be careful.
Don't worry,
Not like
we'll
that.
protect you.
We'll protect you. You're with us now.
They're very much inspire you to do something more, like back you up if you want to go in a direction to improve your personal life.
Good.
So I have support.
Where did you go to elementary school?
Oh, I went to Romoland Elementary School.
Yeah.
Some of the teachers there are still there.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Judy Ramirez was my kindergarten teacher.
Oh, okay.
And Miss McAnews was my third teacher.
Aw.
Well, I think it's important that, you know, now you're in this role, in your area of expertise, this is about in a school district as high as you can go.
Yes.
You know, I hope you don't stop trying to grow and stop trying to look for advancement in your career goals. And I hope you take this opportunity, you know, to mentor some other young employees that might be in the same situation that you were in and like, hey, this is a great start and you know, Romoland's a great school district, even if you don't end up working in Romoland forever, there's more out there and it takes drive and discipline and desire, and you can do anything you want. So, yeah, so I apologize for putting me on the spot. I'm just very fascinated. Food service worker to board executive assistant. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
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 Move on to action items. Project award to digital copier, all inclusive service and supplies and manage print services for network desktop printers. Mr. Butler.
Please ignore that for now. I just was getting ready for the next one, so I didn't have to
Oh.
go back and forth. So for this item, the district currently is using Xerox copier equipment at our district office and our school sites, which has reached the end of its contract term. The district conducted a bid process and received responses from 5 vendors. After evaluating all proposals, conducting vendor interviews, and testing units on site, Sharp Business Systems was selected as having the best solution that fit the district's needs at the best price. Questions?
Board members have any questions or comments? Do I hear a motion to approve the action as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Robert?
Aye.
Mrs. Moon?
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz?
Aye.
Myself, Mr. Jerry, aye. Move on to L2, installation of video cameras at the school board room for events live stream. Mr. Butler.
Yes, thank you. So to provide a little background first, beginning in March 2021, the district has been working with the local partners to live stream our board meetings on YouTube so that the public could remain informed while our facilities were closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are seeking the board's direction on whether to continue live streaming meetings once the boardroom reopens to the public. We received a quote for the equipment necessary to support live streaming from the boardroom, while also having public attendees. You may remember that the usual setup we have when we're working with that vendor takes up a lot of floor space. So we need to kind of find a way to do both. After I share some details about the project, the board will be asked to vote yes to move forward with the project and continue live streaming permanently, or vote no to not proceed with the project and shift back to in-person meetings with no live streaming. Just a real quick background on what the design looks like. You may remember we normally have two cameras set up. We have one camera that is facing the board table. And then we have another camera that's facing the podium here, so that the people viewing the live stream can see the presented information, as well as being able to see the speaker, whether it's podium, or we can switch over to the board if they're asking questions. And so we created a permanent design that emulates that, but also gives a little more flexibility. Because as you may recall, as we've been operating during the pandemic, we frequently have had board members who were visiting the board meetings, attending the board meetings remotely, so we didn't have all board members present. We also did not have cabinet up at the front as we were doing previous, so we had far less people at the front, and so the camera could kind of zoom in and get a bigger picture so that the public who are watching the live stream could better see who was speaking. With more people at the front of the room, we anticipate that a single view may not be enough to get everybody in frame. So we'd be proposing two cameras that would be mounted somewhere in the room on the walls, facing the board tables to kind of, say camera one being this side of the table, camera two being this side of the tables. And then a third camera, again, will mounted somewhere to face the podium location. And then also part of the system is a mixing board. You may have noticed me fiddling with that during board meetings. That's where the cameras are going into that to bring it into the computer that's then pushing it out to the live stream. And that also is what we're connecting the audio in from the microphones in the room, so that we're getting nice clean audio for the live stream. And then I also am able to switch between the different camera views on the fly. So whoever's speaking, basically, I'll manually switch to that camera view, so that's the person who's showing up in the corner there. And so the cost for the initial design for the system is not to exceed $20,000. So we, can talk through if that's sort of the right fit. As we get closer to, if we approve this project, we may decide that we can do it with two cameras, or we may find that we need to kind of adjust how we're mounting them in order to account for air conditioning, vibration, stuff like that. So that's the idea there. And then some considerations, obviously the pros of a live streaming approach. With this design, it's a minimal design that's not going to be taking up a lot of floor space or being intrusive in the room while we're conducting the board meeting with the public present. And it is basically a version of a design that we've been using and that we know works pretty well. It's outputting to YouTube for the public view, so that's just a very easy way for the public to be able to find the meeting for the live stream, as well as to find it after the fact, to be able to watch the recording of it if they didn't see it when it was live. It could potentially allow for live streaming other events in the boardroom, but to be frank, with that kind of a design where the cameras are fixed in the room, it is somewhat limiting on how we set up for those other events. So that's just something that would be consideration. And we can generate English closed captioning for that recording, as YouTube does offer the ability. Some of the cons to consider though, one is that staff must switch the camera views manually, so somebody has to be driving that, as you've seen me doing. It's not an automated system that can kind of know who's talking and do that automatically. One thing too is that we are legally required to provide captioning in our live streams as well as any video recordings. So we would have to find a solution for doing captioning during a live stream, which might require that we change the software that we've been using. What we've been using up until now, we have not been able to do captioning with that. So we may have to rethink the software involved in that approach so we can provide that captioning. And then also consider that the Brown Act does not allow any editing of the content. So what's going out and what's on that recording, that's going out, warts and all, so to speak. So if anything happens during that board meeting, we would be obligated to leave it in. So with that, if there's any questions or open to discussion?
I know that this is not a true comparison because we haven't had a year with this option that we've been using because we've been in COVID and we've had to do things remote and whatever, but I'm wondering, do you have an estimate of an average of viewers that we've had during COVID and during this time?
I actually did a little digging on that. I am not a YouTuber, so I'm not familiar with all of the metrics, but I did find a couple of different counts that I can provide that might shed a little light on that. So I've got 3 different numbers here. One number is, and I just took an average of all of our live streams since we started live streaming. So that's when we were doing it completely virtual, as well as when we shifted into being partially in person. So the average peak concurrent viewers during the live stream. So the average for how many people are actively watching the live stream at a given time is 40 people. There's also the views count. So that's like if you go look at a YouTube video and you see how many people have viewed the video. The average for all of our videos is 233. Now I will say, I'll put a little asterisk on that one. I'm not exactly sure what kind of algorithm YouTube uses to determine the play count. I mean, you think it's as simple as one person watches it, there's a play. But as I was doing some testing today with this setup, I did a test. I watched a hidden YouTube live stream. I was the only person watching it. But when I looked at that live stream, it was done, it said that there were 3 playbacks. So I don't know if it's because I, rewound a little bit or what. So that 233, kind of take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. And then the third metric that I provided, again, this is an average views since published. So this is a metric of how many people have watched the video since the live stream completed and it was published on YouTube as a finished product. The average for that was 100.
How much?
100. And I would say too, going back and looking over the videos, and sort of tallying those numbers for each individual meeting, big differences, as you went through, like certain meetings where it was very small numbers and other ones, maybe 1 or 2 where they were very high numbers. So that's where I got the average.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
I have just a couple of more comments. First of all, I love the idea of eliminating barriers for our community to be involved in our board meetings. A lot of our families work potentially in LA and want to be involved, and maybe it's Saturday afternoon, they watch the board meeting just to be informed. I would hope that that is what our community would use this for. It's important for me that they become involved. But looking at the viewer rate, I think I as an individual board member had to do a cost benefit analysis here. And I'm just taking, it looks like $2,000 per view to pay, pay for these materials. And I'm not so sure that the benefits outweigh the costs. So I started thinking, one of the things that you talked about is we got to do closed captioning, some other things, with a video. So we already audio record our board meetings, and they get archived. I don't know where they get archived, I don't even know where they're recorded to. But I would be interested to know about doing a live audio stream of our board meeting, because I don't know how many people out there really need to see us. They're actually just listening to what we say. I would assume that you don't have to do closed captioning for that. I would assume that you might have to do some sort of translation. I don't know, but I know it would be much more cost efficient, but actually still achieve the same objective, so to speak. I don't know, but I'm not, just for the rest of the board, I don't think the cost benefit analysis for video equipment is worth it. But I do really like how we've given our community the opportunity to watch board meetings and listen and be involved in the work that we do here.
And also in the past, prior to COVID, the meetings are always recorded. And I believe we could always access them on the district website, is that correct? Or do you have to request
I
that?
believe the audio recordings were by request. And that's, I mean, they are just an audio file, so that's not to say that we couldn't post them publicly somewhere, you know, attached to the meeting minutes perhaps, but I don't know exactly what capabilities are within our online agenda system to attach something like that. But I mean, we have a website, so there are ways to make that available if that was the board's desire.
And I agree with Mr. Reller. The one thing that has been beneficial is our community can view and be more involved without having to be, and we do have limited space. And it does allow our community to get more involved, know what the district is doing, all the great accomplishments, and how progressive we've been in implementing, well, I can't even think of what, there's so many things we've implemented, but I agree that 20,000 just for the camera equipment without trying to figure out how to do all the captioning and yes, installation, so I tend to agree that maybe look into a few other less expensive alternatives.
And, you know, I neglected to mention this earlier, but since people were mentioning the captions aspect, while we're not required to offer captioning in anything other than the language being spoken, we do have a significant Spanish-speaking population. So
Right.
if the district decided that, oh, we should also, you know, provide that in Spanish as well, that could incur additional costs with, you know, partnering with a third-party solution to provide translations of captions on the fly. So, I mean, not something we're required to do, but if we felt that that was something that.
Oh, I think to serve our community, we would
Yeah,
have to
that's
incur
something we
that
want
cost
to do.
too, if this was something we chose.
I think we'd be hard pressed not to provide translation for a community member that requested an audio recording of our board meeting. You know, I think we have to do it. I think so. And I would expect our staff to make everything possible to do that. So maybe that changes my mind about having audio recording.
Right.
Because it's just, I don't know. So if we could, I would love to learn more about an live audio well, it would be recorded, but I mean a live audio stream of our meetings.
And what you mean, like what that would entail?
Yeah.
The translation and
Yeah, if it's required and things like that. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I asked about the views and how much people, even during COVID, were actually watching our board meetings. To the exact point that Mr. Reller was talking about is the cost effectiveness. But Mr. Reller, I want to thank you, whether we vote for it or not, I want to thank you for looking into this and finding out how we can make this work and to what extent and cost it would be to us. So thank you for that.
Do I hear a motion to approve? No motion to approve, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is L3, early childhood education funding schedule. Mr. Murray.
This agenda item includes proposed salary schedules for the early childhood education program. There are separate schedules for the state preschool and head start programs. The state preschool salary schedules include a 3.5% increase in compensation, with the intended better balancing the staff salaries between the head start and the state preschool program and the staff. The schedules have also been adjusted to illustrate the monthly salary for the positions of program assistant and family community advocate, because those are blend of money that come from state preschool and head start. As a result, staff recommends approving these salary schedules.
Thank you. Do any board members have comments or questions?
Just a quick question. So the these rates are like statewide, or are these just our rates, meaning is this competitive? I mean, or,
These are based on new resources that came into the school district, into the Head Start state preschool, in this case, state preschool program
okay,
from the state of California.
oh, okay, all right.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Reller?
Aye.
Mrs. Moon?
Aye.
Ms. Clegg?
Aye.
Myself, Mr. Geary, aye. We want to L4, approval to purchase and install portable classrooms at Boulder Ridge Elementary School. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, President Gary. As we referenced earlier in the evening, back in May, we brought a presentation to install a new portable classroom on Boulder Ridge in anticipation of the growth and enrollment there, student development all in that area. We were able to utilize some one-time funding. We requested approval to use some federal COVID dollars with the auspices around being able to provide more, less crowding for students. So we were able to get approval for that. And so what we're asking for tonight is for the board to approve the purchase, and we'll begin working on the plans for that starting tomorrow.
Do any board members have any comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Reller?
Aye.
Mrs. Moon?
Aye.
Ms. Clegg?
Aye.
Myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Moving on to L5, Associated Student Body, ASB 2021-2022 fundraisers. Mr. Baker.
Thank you again, President Gary. Typically, this item is a consent item, just typically goes this time of year in consent. However, we wanted to take some time to pull it out and talk to the board about discussions that we've had with staff around this list. You'll see some of the events involve potential gatherings. And so what we did is we spoke with administration agents, school sites, and let them know that none of the fundraising activities that would involve mass gatherings would be allowable during at least the first trimester, given the COVID environment that we're in. However, they may occur later on in the year. So we're still seeking approval for all of these events with the understanding that the dates may be adjusted.
Do any board members have any comments or questions?
I have a comment. Thank you for discussing that with the staff, because I look this over like every year. I mean, I found all kinds of crazy stuff. So when I saw this, I thought, oh gosh. So thank you for doing that precursor to this. So as long as that happens, that's great. And I know we're not going on any field trips really soon, so.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Reller?
Aye.
Ms. Moon?
Aye.
Mrs. Clegg?
Aye.
Myself, Mr. Geary, aye. There's no need to go to closed session, we'll now move on to the board members' closing comments. Mr. Reller.
Thank you for the, as some of the board members mentioned earlier, thank you for the pictures for opening at school. I know the kids are very, very excited, and I understand there is anxiety in the community, not only here, Riverside County, the state of California, but I think we all do our best and do what we should be to make sure that our kids and our communities are safe, that we'll be okay and we'll move forward through this. Also want to thank our business services department and thinking outside the box and finding ways to utilize one-time funds and looking at that gray area and asking the questions so we can maintain the fiscal solvency as well as get a lot of our projects done during this boom time, because if we don't do it now, chances are later we won't be able to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reller. Ms. Moon?
And no additional comments to my earlier comments.
Ms. Clegg?
I want to thank the staff in preparation for the board meeting tonight, and Just appreciate all your hard work and diligence.
And myself, I have no comment. So the regular board meeting is adjourned at 8:03 p.m.